Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you're well. Hope your Valentine's was good, and your week in general is well. And also for those guys who are doing certifications, like myself, hope you're doing well with that. Maybe the practice test went well, and as you go on with the AWS journey. So Karibuni. I don't know if Adeline is here already. I'd want her to say like hello before we start. We were supposed to start at 10 past, but I see a lot of people already in, so we'll just begin honestly, not to waste your time. But really excited to have you guys here today. We have Timothy, right? I don't know, his year has started well, getting the golden jacket and just really, doing the work. So really excited to have him here today. I don't know anyone on the chat who's doing like a certification currently for AWS or planning to do one this year. If there is, you can just say something on the chat, and maybe you're aspiring to become like Timothy at some point. I'd like to see how many people are doing that. So as you go on, you can just say which certification you're doing on the chat. Would love to know what people are doing, and really excited to have you guys here. So I'm really excited to have Timothy here today, to just take us through a few things on AWS. Being he's been a solution architect, he's worked with a lot of businesses. I've met him in a few other places also, doing presentations, so he's really good at his craft. So excited to have him here, and yeah, hopefully we'll be having him more as we go on. Okay, I see Sarah is saying she's doing her solutions associate. Yeah. Oh, she's done, oh, just as done both associate and developer, preparing for a solutions architect. That's really cool. I'm trying to do the pro one, so it's a lot more, but yeah. So really excited to see what they're going to do. Timothy is doing cloud practitioner. Just finished high school, decided to get good for you, man. All right, we'll go on. We'll kind of look at the chat as we go on. So Timothy, Karibu, let me see if I can spotlight. How do you spotlight? Let me spotlight Timothy. Yes. Perfect. How are you doing today, Timothy? You well?
Well, thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. I really want to thank you for giving me this audience. It's basically a brainstorming session. I believe because I've seen the majority of you guys are already, AWS Cloud Pros, especially those who have already advanced to Solution Architect Associate. I've seen a couple of you guys preparing for level, which is a really good thing. I think the growth of community speaks a lot to what those who came before us have done in that space. Speaking about cloud in general, not just AWS, that creating awareness is what pushes the growth for adoption of cloud. Like I like to say, it's hard to sell what you don't. And for those who are in business like myself, um, this awareness, evangelism sort of makes the conversations with customers a little bit more easier and, far more interesting than, when we started a few years back. So yes, thank you, Mark, again. And feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions for me, and I will be happy to take them as we continue.
Yeah, great. So maybe as you start off, before you start doing your presentation, maybe the first question I'd ask you, which was your first certification? Now that you have, I think, 12 certifications, which was your first one? And I know you'll talk
Um,
on your but
yes. So I did my first certification during the COVID time, just at the kickoff of COVID, and it was the cloud practitioner, right? And I remember those days. I don't know whether it was because the cloud adoption was not so much within this market, but AWS was issuing quite a number of vouchers. And at that time, the voucher that came to my email, I noticed it when it was a week to expire, right? So I had to, kind of uh, crash course on it. So within a week, I was able to, And we did it together with my cousin, actually. So my cousin did it like today, and then I did that day after. But that was back in, I think, late 2019 or 2020, very early 2020. Yes. So cloud practitioner was my first. However, before I did the certification, I'd already interacted with AWS on a couple of projects because the previous years I was a freelance, and I was doing a lot of web application development, and I interacted with both AWS and GCP. Yeah, so cloud practitioner was my first AWS certification.
Yeah, great. So even Timothy, since he's doing the cloud practitioner, there you go. So I think that's where he started from. Yeah. So Timothy, I'll let you do your thing. You can present your screen and can have fun with it.
Okay. So let me know once you're able to see my screen. So,
maybe as you do that, yeah, maybe for a good introduction of who you are and what you do, you can also do that. I think also for the audience, then we can go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'll quit and reopen Zoom. I think to give it. I'm using a market. I'm not giving it permissions.
Okay.
So just a minute.
All right. No worries. So let's give him 1 minute. Then I think I'll be back. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear my sound, but I'll just share my screen.
They see me for my thorns and nothing more. You see me for my beauty.
Yes. As we wait also for him to come through, welcome to today's presentation. Really excited to have you guys. I think a lot of you guys are new. I'll share our LinkedIn, Twitter, and also WhatsApp, where you can be able to join and be part of the community. I don't know if Timothy's back. I think, yeah, there he is. So I'll stop sharing my screen, then I'll let Timothy do it. Okay. Stop sharing. All right, great. I think you're back, Timothy? Yeah. Yes, we can see your screen, but I can't hear you though. I don't know if you're on mute, but
All right. Can you hear me now?
yeah, we can.
Okay. So I think, is it okay if I do my introductions now or later?
Yes, now it's fine. Then you can go. Yeah.
All right. So as everyone of you knows my names, I'm Timothy Munyao. I'm a solutions architect by profession. My career in cloud started way back in 2020 officially. Initially, I was, doing, learning as I was doing projects. It was very early in my career in the cloud space, and I was sort of, trying to figure out which platform to, specialize in and run with for my projects back then. So part of the reason why I got into AWS was I came across a project that required, hosting on AWS. And I really had a big challenge with it because, I had not used AWS before. My knowledge was GCP, and, I kind of needed to learn on the job, basically, trying to figure out which service to use for which component of the application and so forth. So I came across a platform called Code Mentor. I put it on the chat. So Code Mentor is a platform where you have freelancers who help junior developers build solutions, and they sort of offer a consulting service sort of. And the person who was guiding me through, deploying on AWS was very knowledgeable in that space. And, I developed keen interest, and then, day after day, I, explored AWS and decided to, train myself rather in that space. And then for the certification, and the first one I did was the cloud practitioner. Fast forward, the year 2021, yes, late 2021, got a consultancy job with one of the companies in Kenya. And then we started building, a cloud team in-house. And then, continued that way, migrating workloads to AWS. And then we got into the partnership space. And that's how, I ended up with 11 degrees and then Kitilano. And that has been my career. Basically leading a team of cloud engineers at the forefront, architecting and, running from small to very large migrations to AWS. So my certification journey, of course, has not been easy. I've taken breaks in between, simply because of, I'm a family man, so I have to also balance between my family, work, and, personal life. So that journey was, interrupted here and there because of other commitments. But overall, I think a lot of the success came from the support of, the people that are in my life, the people that I've worked with before, and, my colleagues encouraging me and, cheering me on. Essentially for me, it was, a challenge after the other. Once you do the solutions architect associate, then you get a very in-depth and a very wide view of what AWS is capable of, and you just want to do the next one. And I remember after the solutions architect associate, I wanted to do, security, and the security I wanted to do. There was an exam that was, retired, the SAP, which was basically, for me, the interest was, we were handling a lot of migration for manufacturing customers. And, I needed to solidify my skills and my knowledge within that area. So, one exam after the other, and just being dedicated to, ensuring that I don't stop learning. One thing I can say has helped me greatly is the fact that, you're studying and you're doing the same things. So you sort of, it becomes very easy to apply the knowledge and the skills that you have even during the exams. So a lot of times when people ask me what's the secret is, the secret is in doing, right? If you do not practice what you're studying or what you're preparing for, it's very difficult to apply, because as you go higher in these certifications, it's more of applicable or real life situations where you're given a problem and you need to solve. So that has helped me a lot. I hope that every one of you and anyone who wants to, pursue this path, that they also get the same opportunity to, practice and gain more hands-on skills, because that will help them in the examinations. The other thing I think has been so helpful is peer groups, right? And just being able to challenge yourselves as a group and to give yourselves targets as what you want to do within a specific period of time. And part of that was, my colleagues and those who were doing the certification with us, we had set goals for ourselves that by this time I want to have done 1, 2, 3 examinations or certifications. And that pushed me a lot because, I compete a lot and, I operate from that mindset of if you choose to be the best, you want to be the best, you have to do more than any other person. And sleepless nights, denying myself the luxury of spending my weekends with friends, and just putting in the hours to study. So that has helped me a lot. The Golden Jacket, I think, when I was doing these examinations, it was not a goal for me. The goal for me was, once I have accumulated, or I have a knowledge of what all these domains are about, then it would be very easy for me to choose a specialization area. And hence the reason why I wanted to just do them and keep doing them. A lot of other exams, were coming up as I was doing the older ones, and there wasn't so much of, practice exams and so forth, or even, content to study. But when I finished my last certification exam last year in October or early November, for me it was like, okay, so what next? Do I move to a different cloud and see what the multi-cloud aspects works, or do I stick to AWS? And this is my take. My take is, you cannot be the best in everything. You have to choose a path and own your skills in that. I chose to, practice more, do more projects as much as possible to build my skill within that area. If the opportunity to learn other cloud platform comes, well and good. However, for now, my focus has been AWS, and I think it's going to be AWS for the next couple of years, 2 maximum, and then I can see what the rest can offer. The recognition that comes with the Golden Jacket is good for me in this way. It presents an opportunity to evangelize more, speak about cloud more, and that's good for not just building the community, but also for my personal growth. I'm able to, with the recognition comes, of course, with more opportunities, and the other thing is challenge. I feel more challenged now. There's now a difference in the expectation of, more. A lot of people expect more from me, which, I'm also trying to learn. I'm not a very public person, but this all recognition comes with that. It's a responsibility that I have to take. And hopefully I'm going to use it for the best of my peers and the people that, are in the AWS community, as well as for myself, right? At the end of the day, we did this with one goal, right? Me and my friend used to say, where we come from, we do not have trust funds. There are no trust funds where we come from. We are the trust fund. We are the backup plan. We are the plan A. We are everything. And but of course, this has to kind of make sense for my career and for my profession. Those who wish to follow the path, it's possible. I mean, there's nothing impossible if you set your minds to it. You can achieve it. A lot of many other people have achieved it. And I believe this is just the beginning. I might be the pioneer, but a lot of more people will achieve this and will continue to, expand the community, which is good for the people who are in business, the people who are offering, cloud services, like the company, last couple of years, and my next venture. So I think it's good for business. And I'm happy to see the community grow, see more people gaining interest in this, tech industry, and hopefully, I'll be able to guide those who want to be guided. I'll be able to, assist those who want to be assisted, and just give my insights and guidance for them. So that's me and my journey to, the Golden Jacket. If you have questions, please feel free to shoot them out, and Mark will direct them to me. So I will jump into the first topic, which is about cloud architectures. So for business value, when we talk about business value, what are we talking about? Why do we have businesses considering to adopt cloud or to migrate to cloud? The first value that every business seeks to achieve on cloud is cost savings. Let's start there. Cost savings. A lot of businesses move to cloud for cost benefits. The other one is staff productivity. That's another value that they're also looking at.
Just 1 minute, Timothy. For whatever reason, I can't see your screen. I'm not sure why. I can see yours presenting, but I'm not seeing it.
Let me share again.
Yeah, just share again. Then.
So you can see my screen. Is it visible now?
Yeah, I think perfect. Yeah, now I can see it. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so business value in terms of cost savings. And we're talking about cost, we're talking about just the financial aspects of it. The other one is staff productivity, operational resilience, and business agility. So those are the core 4 areas where businesses are seeking to derive value from. And, I'm going to speak about each of these pillars basically, and, try and speak in technical terms on how do we architect to achieve cost savings for business? How do we architect so that businesses or our customers are able to achieve staff productivity, operational resilience, and agility? So I will jump into the cost savings. If for some reason my screen is not visible, please let me know, Mark.
Yeah, you're good now. Yeah.
All right. So, and as a solutions architect, and I believe every person on this call is a technical person, why does the blueprints or the architectures that we choose for our customers or for every migration opportunity matter to the business? Is it because the business goal is to achieve cost savings, or is there more to that? And how can we architect to ensure that we are not just looking at the initial cost savings by virtue of migrating to the cloud, and more so being able to optimize the architectures to achieve cost savings for our customers? So essentially, most businesses will not just achieve value by the cost savings that we look at. If you move your overall infrastructure, IT infrastructure to cloud, yes, you will achieve some cost savings, but that's not where we see most customers achieving cost savings from. When you look at a lift and shift migration, for instance, you're basically picking what you have on-prem and provisioning on AWS. Does that offer you any cost savings? Yes. Is it the only or the most effective way to ensure that in the long term, business derives value in that migration? No. You have to go far and beyond to ensure that you keep optimizing for cost. You keep on ensuring that if you are to compare the TCO of operating on-prem and the TCO for operating on cloud, you have a lesser TCO for operating on cloud other than on-prem. Because if you just look at achieving cost savings by the migration itself, what happens after 1, 2, 3 years is that that customer or that business will start evaluating going back on-prem. And we've seen that cloud attrition, we've seen it before, that customers who initially migrated to the cloud, are coming back on-prem because they cannot handle the cost. And that is where now your architecting comes to place, right? What do you want? How do you want to architect for a business to ensure that the cost does not go up without any, considerable change in the infrastructure, for example? So I will give an example of a customer who will migrate to AWS because of the incentives that come, for example. They've got some credits and they're happy to move to the cloud. But those credits will at some point be depleted and they have to pay the difference. So such a customer might not be able to handle that cost within the next, after the next 1 year or 3 years. So what we've seen with such customers is they're moving back to on-prem or even evaluating to going to other platforms to host their workloads. So in this case, as a solutions architect, what you need to do is you need to eliminate waste on AWS. You need to look at, are the services that you've provisioned being used sufficiently? Are there idle services that need to be terminated, for instance? Are there services that you've over-provisioned? For example, when you look at a typical on-prem infrastructure, the sizing is done based on forecasting, right? Not based on what's the actual requirement for, the resources. So on the AWS, we do not want to duplicate that, strategy of setting up servers. For example, you want to set it up in a way that for whatever resources you provisioned, they're being used adequately, and you do not have any, unutilized resources, for example. And one way of doing that is by ensuring that you've set up auto-scaling, for example, where if you're using, for example, EC2 servers, then you can them or grow them with the demand. And that can be automated using the EC2 auto-scaling. The other aspect is, especially when you're looking at web applications and applications that are more cloud native, is to ensure that if it's possible, you can move to a serverless architecture, for instance, where you're only using when the code, for example, is executed, and not just an idle service that's not being utilized. Because with cost on AWS, you have to analyze it per unit and not just as an overall cost of the total infrastructure. You have to look at what is the cost of executing, for example, a process. And then can you optimize it further to ensure that there is also return of investment on top of the profits and the savings that you make by running that infrastructure. And serverless architectures, the modernization aspect of using managed services on AWS as well is something that most customers are able to see cost savings in the long term and not just by the initial migration. So choose your architecture and services on AWS. Ensure that you've built your architectures in a way that they are able to handle demand and grow the resources that are required based on that demand, and not just necessarily deploying AWS services for the sake of being able to run our workload. The choice of services, again, is also important. For example, if you're using or you have a platform that does not really require 100% uptime, you can also choose to go with spot instances. You can be able to automate the process of stopping and starting some of those services to ensure that you do not incur cost when you do not necessarily require those services up and running. The other aspect is storage, and I've seen a lot of customers enjoy savings from that bit, is the ability to choose the right storage tier for your data. For instance, if you're taking backups, unlike in an on-premise setup where you have data that you've stored in hard disks, there's no other way, any other place. Even if you were to archive it, you'll still be storing it in those hard drives, and it's accumulated space. With S3 intelligent tiering, for example, you can be able to move or automate the movement of data between storage classes to achieve more cost savings. If if you can move it to deep archive, which is cost effective because it's data that you're not necessarily retrieving often, then you can do that. And especially for customers who are looking for a disaster and recovery solution or a backup solution, then you can be able to do a data classification to understand how often do they access this particular class of data. Do I need to put it in a readily available storage tier, or can I move it to an archiving tier where the cost is better? And some of these things are things that you will achieve post the migration or post the data transfer to AWS. So further to just architecting and building your blueprint, you want again to come back and continue to optimize your architecture to ensure that you're saving every cent where it's possible, and not just sticking to the initial blueprint that you build for your solution or for your customer. So that is one of the ways that a customer is going to be able to see value, and over time, not just the initial migration stage, where instead of going and paying for storage infrastructure, they decided to move to AWS. Yes, they saved the CapEx cost, operational cost. Now, you also need to go further and ensure this cost does not build up over time, and then you start experiencing customer attrition where they now want to move back to on-prem. The other aspect is, especially with even selecting the different types of services that we have on AWS, you have a choice of, for example, which instance do I choose that is more cost effective to my workload, to my business. There are some instances that, if you look at the cost calculator, there are some instances that offer better pricing, and that is coupled with even better performance compared to others. So you want to also select the best instance, for example, for your workload, for the right workload. There are some workloads that demand a lot of compute capacity, for instance, while others demand for better memory performance. So you want to also analyze your workloads to understand what does it demand in terms of infrastructure. What kind of instance do I select? Even when it comes to storage, what type of EBS volume do I select to optimize on cost? Because as you know, we have GP3, we have GP2, and this both are EBS volumes, SSD, but they are priced different. The difference here will be IOPS, and then and if you want to even provision for more IOPS, what is the cost for that? So you also want to analyze your, there are services that you can set up, like the AWS Compute Optimizer, that will advise you, especially on the EBS volume, if you have selected the most cost-effective EBS volume Say, for example, you've selected a GP3 or an SD1, and your workload does not necessarily, then you can switch that and opt for a better or for the most appropriate service on AWS for your workload. I will move to the next value that business wants to derive from the architecture that we select for them. And you know, part of the staff productivity, and when we talk about it, is a lot of time. When you look at the traditional IT setup, a lot of time the IT people, you know, they spend on administrative tasks. For example, patching servers, you know, cleaning up, you know, old data, even deploying an application that has been built because it's a manual process. They spend a lot of time on that. Whereas when you move to AWS, so if you're building a solution to host on AWS, you want to select also services that, you know, eliminate the heavy lifting for your technical teams and essentially provide them with an opportunity to, you know, focus on a more differentiated, you know, task. For example, if it's a software development company, the IT people should not necessarily be spending time or their time on managing servers or even deploying environments to host their applications. They should focus on building the applications. And one way of doing it is, for example, setting up, you know, CI/CD pipelines that are automated and integrated for testing and, you know, for production. And AWS provides those services where you can now automate the process of testing and deployment of their workloads. You can use code pipeline, code deploy, code build, and build that continuous CI/CD pipeline for ease of, you know, allowing now the staff to focus on building the application and not rather, you know, deploying the applications manually. The other bit is infrastructure as code. And I know a lot of people speak about it, but they might not understand how this brings value to the customer. Because if you think about deploying an entire data center, it might take months just to set up a data center. It might take days to even deploy an application. But when you introduce the aspect of code as infrastructure as code, perhaps if you're using Terraform, CloudFormation, you know, and Zimbo and so forth, you look at how fast you're able to, you know, deploy an entire environment versus, you know, if it was being done manually. So while you're architecting for, you know, business value, you want to think about certain things and say, instead of the business, if they want to set up, you know, an infrastructure for hosting, for example, an SAP workload, why don't I automate that using infrastructure as code? Whereby just executing, they're able to deploy an entire production environment and can even destroy that environment in minutes. So that's the beauty of it. The other one is managed services, where, for example, if you're hosting databases on EC2, of course, you have to think about patching those nodes. You have to think about the security of the data there, the backups and so forth. But if you switch to a managed service, then of course, that other aspect of managing the instance where the database is hosted is taken care of by AWS. So that frees more time for the staff to do other things. However, you also have to keep a balance between what's the business goal or priority. Because some of these managed services might cost more as compared to if you were to host it on an EC2, for example. If you look at the cost of running, you know, a smaller MS SQL or MySQL database on an EC2 versus running it on RDS, you might see that RDS is a bit costly as compared to running it on EC2. However, that cost, you have to also think about it. It's not just the cost for paying for the service. What is the cost of the cloud engineers who are going to perhaps be managing the security? the patching of those instances, and then, balance that and make the trade-offs where necessary to ensure that over and above the business derives the value that makes sense to them. You might not just say, let's run this on RDS because it's managed. How do you justify it? You have to think about not just the cost of running the service, but also managing that service and being able to justify that. We see a lot of customers who derive a lot of value by running their databases on managed services, for example. Even when you look at running your containerized applications, you can choose to run them on EC2, but what is the cost, or what is the time that you will spend by managing the node where these containers are running? So you have to make balances, you have to make trade-offs even as you build your architectures for value. The third pillar is operational resilience. And when we talk about operational resilience, we're talking about the ability of a workload to be able to sustain, any, say, there was a power failure, there was, the server was not, for some instance, it was attacked and so forth. There was a DDoS attack and so forth. So you want to be able to reduce the downtime that comes with these interruptions. And as you build your, architectures on AWS, you have to think about high availability, for example. You have to think about, is this choice of, service going to sustain any, spike in traffic? And how do I handle that? Because every downtime costs money. If you look at the time that it is spent between point of failure and resumption of service, it's money that has been lost, for example. If a business was running, say, their ERP, which is the most critical system for any business, and there was a failure, and it takes them a week to resume operations, or to resume even using that workload or that application. For that whole week, things either were being done manually, where there are errors, or there was totally nothing that was happening. They're not able to sell, right? They're not able to purchase. So the business is essentially not running, right? So you end up losing money, you end up losing customers, you end up losing reputation. Same applies to cloud, even when you're deploying on cloud, because you have to understand that everything fails at some point. The cloud is not special. It will fail at some point. So how do you want to architect to ensure that as you build your solutions on AWS, you're also thinking about how fast do I get back in case something happens? What is the required time for this business in case something happens? Because that's where we see a lot of trade-offs happening. You will see a customer say, okay, we know by best practice, because each of these services on AWS come with SLAs, right? An SLA of 99.99%, for that to be guaranteed, you have to architect or use that solution in a certain way. You do not expect to get that percentage uptime if you've not architected well. And we have a framework that basically guides you in ensuring that you make the best choices based on what the business requires, right? And one of the ways that perhaps you can achieve it is by deploying on multiple availability zones or even multiple regions, because these are very separate or segregated physical locations where if, say, for example, there was loss of power in one availability zone, then your workloads can also continue operating on the other side. If it's a total calamity, like, we have floods, we have tsunamis, and we have all those kind of things, you have to think ahead and say, for this particular workload, because we know how critical it is, this is how we architect it. And perhaps choose a multi-AZ or multi-region deployment. It comes with a cost, right? So that's why I say you have to think about the business priority and the business goal and keep a balance even as you architect for high availability. The other aspect is backup and disaster recovery. We have S3 cross-region replication. We have S3 backup. We have EC2 backups. And you can leverage on these services to have continuous backups that are actually automated, because you again don't want to make it a manual process. Other, you need to automate things so that tomorrow someone does not say, oh, I forgot to check the backup, right? You need to automate that process, push your backups from EC2 to S3 for redundancy purposes, ensure that your backups on S3 are replicated, maybe cross-region replication, to also ensure that resilience in case something happens. The other aspect that I've seen a lot of people using, to take advantage of is, even as you're building architectures, you also have to think about what services am I using? What is the cost of the data transfer? Is there a way to minimize that? Because, for example, if you're running your application server on a different availability zone as the database, then there's a cost for data transfer. And the cost for data transfer cross availability zone, cross regions is high, right? So you have to put them maybe in the same availability zone just to ensure that the cost for that data transfer is limited or reduced rather. So if you think about some services, for example, RDS, so that will give you, you can deploy it on a multi-AZ, so that automatically takes care of the heavy lifting of setting up the, the cross-region or the multi-region deployment. And then backups, of course, are taken care of. So you just basically have to define how long you want to retain that data. And then speaking about the backups, so people take, for example, the EBS snapshots, right? So you take EBS snapshots, and then you're keeping them, and you're not monitoring them necessarily. So you take EBS snapshots over 1 month. So you've accumulated a lot of snapshots, and they're very costly. So you also need to be coming back and automate the process of, you see that this is the life cycle that I've set up for my EBS volumes. If you want to keep it for a day or 2 days, automate the process so that you do not forget to delete old snapshots. Even for S3, set up life cycle management to ensure that if, for example, you do not, or the business does not need to keep data for a year, you don't have to accumulate the cost for keeping those backups over time. So you can automate it using the lifecycle management on S3, set up those policies based on what the retention policies or the retention requirements are, to ensure that you have automated the process to avoid, sometimes I've seen it, I've been a victim of this, that a customer says, we want to keep backups for 30 days, and they're happy with that, right? So you set up an S3 bucket, you're pushing backups there. Then you forget that at the end of the month, that bill will come, an additional one will come, because you keep on keeping this data and it's accumulating in capacity and not necessarily removing the old backups. So you have to come back and ensure that you've set up the policies to ensure that you've automated the process of managing the life cycle of your data and the storage periods that you've agreed with the customer. Because if you do not do that, then at the end of the month, the bill comes and the customer is like, why is this bill higher than the last month? And at that point, you might not be able to understand where that cost has come from. However, you go back to your initial setup and those 30 days and automate that process and ensure that you're not keeping data for longer periods than required. Business agility. Basically, we're speaking about speed to market, the ability to come back or to recover from any failures and so forth, and especially for startups or growing businesses, they are looking for a platform, or they are expecting to be able to be more agile when they move to cloud, other than when they are on-prem. And part of the reason is because on the cloud, if you look at your architecting process, because as we say, when you're architecting, you're picking different services and components, and you're basically choosing amongst different solutions, because many solutions may be for one problem, and you're trying to make trade-offs for which one is the best for this particular requirement. So as you do that, you also have to think about how does it help my business to perhaps be more agile? Is it faster if I decide to, for example, if I have a new application as a business and I want to go to market, what is the fastest way to do that? Is it going to the console, picking the services manually and setting them up? Can I use infrastructure as code and basically have those templates automate the process for me? Can I use CI/CD pipelines to ensure that the deployment process and the testing process is more efficient and faster? Instead of using Amazon EC2s and so forth, can I deploy this on Lambda, use API gateways for the purposes of reducing cost and becoming more agile? Initially, the method for migration that might make sense and that might be the fastest way to go to cloud might be a lift and shift. However, for the business to be more agile and for the business to be able to spread out and even go global, you have to think about trading off some of the services and choosing the best for particular workloads. And that is really advised by the experience that you have of using some of those applications. For example, if you're looking at containerized applications, and I have a solution here that needs to have multiple modules, and the deployment has to be decoupled to ensure that if one of the modules fails, for example, it does not necessarily have to affect the whole platform. So then you make a choice of using the microservices, containers, and Docker or Kubernetes and so forth. So that is a choice that you have to make based on, also the way the application is architected. Because a lot of times, even for applications that could be easily converted into, cloud native, a lot of the builders, maybe because of lack of knowledge or because of lack of, it was not the goal when you are building the application, they might need a bit of refactoring, right? So that refactoring needs to be done after the migration, so that again, you do not hinder the process of moving to the cloud for whatever reason. The other part is, you can choose to go for managed data analytics solutions, for example, right? You can use QuickSight instead of building your own, data analytics platforms, and then their business is able to move fast and make decisions fast based on using those managed data analytics services. If you're building, for example, it's an AI machine learning solutions, then you can think about leveraging ready available solutions and platforms on AWS. For example, you can push your models on Amazon Bedrock, and you can train them on SageMaker, and you can build your application off of that. You can also take advantage of the already available models that have been made available to you using those platforms. And we're starting to see a pattern for augmented AI from especially startups even in this market, where now they're taking advantage of Amazon Bedrock, and they're building applications basically just by using the generative AI power of that and building solutions of that, building chatbots, omni-channels, and so forth. And that is a trend that is going to be a topic the next coming years, that a lot of businesses are now leveraging the technology that is already made available to them. And this is, helping them derive more value other than if they were to decide to build their own infrastructure for that purpose. So basically, to summarize it, when you're architecting for value, you need to start small. Think about each and every component of the workload that you're migrating or the business need. Understand what the business goals are and priorities are. You need to assess, you need to analyze the workload even prior to deciding which services to use. Because when you have knowledge about how the application works, what are the dependencies for this application? What is the performance requirements for this application? Understand what the customer requires in terms of data retention. Understand things about compliance, security needs, and then start by each component and build your blueprint from there. The AWS well-architected framework is a good tool even to assess the choices that you've made for your migration then, right? Because it will show you what are the advantages of using a specific service or using a specific database, and then from there you can make a decision based on that information, right? So it's not an audit per se, it's a way to assess, it's a way to assess what is the benefit, what is the advantage or disadvantage of utilizing specific services on AWS, or the choices that I've made pertaining my architecture. So that, again, is a tool that you have to continuously make reference to. There's a white paper for that, basically to understand the 6 pillars and to know that you have to make choices that are, are relatable to the business requirement and goal. You can leverage tools like the AWS Trusted Advisor for checking any security checks, and you can automate the process of getting some of those security occurrences. You can use AWS Cost Optimizer. You can leverage on tools like now they have on the cost management. You'll be able to set up quick site reports for how you conduct. A lot of times, even when we were starting, for example, we were using NAT gateways for all our architectures, right? But then we came to understand, right? There is a cost to these NAT gateways, and we can reduce it by using, for example, so we can make a trade-off. Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, I had lost you guys. I had lost you for a minute. But
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So the cost optimization, even to gain more value for business, you have to keep optimizing your architectures. Do not stick to the initial architecture that you used for the migration. However, keep optimizing. You will gain more business value by continually optimizing your architectures, making different choices for the services that perhaps you initially selected, and that is where you will see more value for your business and for your customers. So I would like to end our session by saying that cost savings are funding of innovation. So when you have saved money, the business will, of course, push that budget to a different sector. Perhaps it will go to training more the staff more, might go to building more platforms, it might even increase the cloud adoption. Productivity frees up brain power. When the technical teams are freed from those menial tasks, then they can focus their energies on, activities that bring value to business. And resilience builds trust. When your applications are highly available, then you will not face customer anger, customer attrition, because your application is not working. Take an example. Architecture is not resilient, then you might end up losing customers. Agility lets you outpace competitors. When you're able to go to market fast, when you're able to go global fast, when you're able to roll out new platforms, new products faster than your competitors, so you're basically outcompeting them. So AWS is not just a cloud, it's a business accelerator. And the way we look at it is it enables businesses gain more value, gain a larger market share. And that's why we seek to architect better. Thank you for your patience. I will take questions before I jump into the next, the next topic, which is about migrations. And what are the proven pathways to ensuring that you have a successful cloud migration? So, Mark, do we take questions at this juncture, or do we complete next step?
Yes. Great. Can you hear me? Well, I think my internet dropped off a bit.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. There's some questions here. I see Philip has a question, but before that, Philip, I'll let you speak. There's some questions that were asked on the chat. So we'll start with that. So Sarah had a question, right? Have you worked on a project where you use spot instances? How do they really work? If a case where someone bids more than what you had bid for a spot instance, we can start with that. Then Duncan had a question on what tools can be used to size on-prem infrastructure prior to a cloud migration so as to architect properly and avoid high cost. I think someone had an answer there. I think Mo had an answer. Also, if Mo, you want to talk at some point, I'll let you do that, but I'll let Timothy take that first. Then, what is the other question here? Sorry. Daniel Gishure asked a question. Do you need to know coding before to be an architect, an AWS architect, or just being a solutions architect? And Muad had mentioned, yep, verification fails, my rate comes out. All right, great. Those are the questions. Then Philip, I think once we finish those, I'll let you ask your question before you go on to the next thing. Yeah.
Okay. So allow me to take the first question about spot instances and whether I've used them before. I've not come across a workload or a migration that required spot instances before. However, the way you make a choice of whether you need to go for spot instances or not is whether your application can withstand the downtimes that might come with losing your bid for your spot instances, right? A lot of times, if you think about situations that are appropriate for spot instances, you will not find many, right? A lot of times, even for test environments, you need to have the capability to, sort of control what happens and when you lose that, right? So with spot instances, honestly, I have not used them before for any migration whatsoever. However, the basis of whether to use spot instances or not is anchored on the workload that you migrate, for example, what you're hosting. Is it a service that can withstand, that loss of uptime? And interruptions. If yes, you can choose them. If not, then of course not. So for me, I've not used the spot instances because I've not come across the requirement, any specific project that required the use of spot instances. The other question is sizing of on-prem infrastructure. Yes, there are tools, and I will share that list with you, Mark, so that you can share with the team. And some of these are, tools like, for example, you have the migration evaluator, which basically is used during assessment, and it can assist you in building, a business case and understanding even the TCO, just understanding what has been provisioned on AWS, and then it will, of course, you run it for a couple of days, a minimum of say 14 days, and then it's able to pick the utilization for the specific servers that you have, and then it will give you recommendations on what to size on AWS. So that is one tool. Of course, we have other third-party tools like Cloudamize that you can also use. Essentially, you're supposed to run it during your off-peak and on-peak, right? So when your peak utilization, so that it can also pick that data, and when you're not on peak, right? So that helps you in sizing your on-prem infrastructure and building the TCO, or basically your total cost of ownership if you're to move to AWS. However, it's important to mention that this data that it gives you might not be, like accurate to 100%. Why? Because out of experience is that it will give you a specific recommendation for an EC2, for example, because and it might not be what is required. For example, if it's an SAP application, and it will pick that the utilization for this particular workload maybe requires 8 GB and 32, 8 CPU, 32 GB. But as we know, SAP workloads require high memory, they require high performance. So if you pick just what is recommended and you move to AWS, you might face performance issues. So the recommendation is try and use generic services for different workloads. For workloads that have tools that are better for sizing, like the SAP has the SAP Quick Sizer early watch report that basically give you a better representation of what the sizing for that environment is, then you go for those tools. In some cases, it's important to migrate and then optimize. You keep right sizing, because there is no one size for everything, or it's not like you're forecasting and you understand how this workload works. Is post migration, you need to keep right sizing, right? Because even for some workload, it might give you a recommendation that's higher than what is necessarily required. So there are multiple tools that you can use for sizing your own infrastructure if you're considering moving to cloud. The other question is about whether someone needs to be a programmer or a coder for them to be solutions architects. My answer to this question is going to be both ways. To be really honest, there's a lot of there's a lot of advantage that comes with understanding even basic coding skills. For example, even to be able to use infrastructure as code, to build those templates, to even understand how containerized applications work, it's better when you have when you have coding skills. Over and above, even operating system skills, for example, understanding how Linux works and Windows servers, it's important. Because when you call yourself a solution architect, it's not just about laying out the blueprints for hosting workloads on AWS. It's also about understanding how each of those components work together to provide a full solution, right? So yes, it's advantageous to you to have coding skills. Is it a requirement for you to be able to, to learn? No, it's not. You can still learn, right? There are a lot of people who are not programmers who've been able to do the solutions architect, and they passed, they've excelled. However, where I see a gap is, because I interact with a lot of them, is those who have coding skills have demonstrated way far abilities when it comes to architecting on AWS and any other cloud in that regard. So it's important for you to even try and understand or develop, the basic skills for, some of these, core languages like Python, understand a bit of Bash script, and it will help you a lot. Because when it comes to, infrastructure as code, you need to understand a bit of, that coding knowledge. I hope I have answered these questions. Mark, over to you.
Yes. Philip, you had two questions. Do you mind unmuting and asking, or should I ask it for you? I see you already typed them out.
I've typed them, but I can just ask. Timothy, hi, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. My question, the first one is, when you're speaking about the NAT gateway, especially in architecting, you were trying to say something about the cost, and
Yes.
I think your connection was disrupted and you didn't get to finish. And the other thing is, when you talk about augmented AI and infusing generative AI in our applications, what are some of the considerations? Because I understand that Bedrock provides like a range of models to pick from. So what are some of the considerations? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so for example, if you're talking about NAT gateway, we know there's a cost for there's a cost for the data transfer. There's also a cost for just running their plans, because it's basically a managed EC2 instance, and it costs money, right? And what is the purpose of using a NAT gateway, for example, right? So if you have some instances that are on or lying in private subnet, they need to sort of access the internet for some reason, you need a NAT gateway in that situation, right? And a lot of times, by default, when you're deploying a VPC, you will end up deploying a NAT gateway that perhaps you're not even using. And when you look at the bill at the end of the month and the cost that comes with the NAT gateway, you'll find it as the cost for the NAT gateway and the data transfer cost, right? However, think about an infrastructure where you've deployed an EC2 instance, and it's only essential when you're putting it on the public subnet, and that is the time you're putting a NAT gateway at the same time, a private subnet, is you can use EC2 instance connect, for example, which, when you look at the pricing for that in terms of how much it costs for data transfer using the VPC endpoints versus using a NAT gateway, you will save over almost 200% just by switching to using the VPC endpoints. Because the cost for running the VPC endpoint and the cost for the data transfer for VPC endpoint is very big, very big. So you will again see a lot of savings in that, and even security, for example, because if you want to use the VPC endpoint, you do not necessarily have to put your EC2 instance in a public subnet, for instance, right? So you will again have secured that instance by just using the VPC endpoint, and of course you will put in the measures that are required. So that is for NAT gateway and using the VPC endpoints. Just like, for example, if you're using the EC2 instance connect to an instance from a private subnet. The other question is around augmented AI or the Gen AI, and what are some of the concerns and some of the things that you have to think about when you want to leverage on those services, for example. So one is the accuracy. What is the accuracy of the feedback that the agents that you build off of these LLMs is? So you have to think about that accuracy. You can fine-tune those models. You can customize those models. You can bring in your own models just to ensure that you have better accuracy, right? So continuously, fine-tuning it. So that's one of the things. The other thing is cost, of course, right? So there's also cost for using, for example, Bedrock. So you have to also keep in mind, what is the cost, what is the budget allocated for building your AI agents, and so forth. The other thing is, compliance and regulation. right? Some of the data that is there might be proprietary data, and you cannot just use it for your business. So think about the data sources. Of course, you can bring in your data sources and build your knowledge bases off of Bedrock, leveraging on those available LLMs, and continuously improve your AI agents. Some of these tools or some of these LLMs are also being continuously fine-tuned, even by the people who own them. So it's always good to look at the versions that are available or that have been made available on Bedrock or any other platform, right? So those are some of the few considerations that you have to make as you build your Gen AI application off of Bedrock and any other service that has given you access to their LLMs.
Say there are more questions here. Do you want to do a bit of migration, then we go into questions, or how do you know?
So I think we can take 2 more questions and then we move to migrations.
Okay, I have 4 questions here from Prince. Okay, let's do this one for Prince. Then we can just do, we can do this, then we can go on to that. Because for Prince, it's kind of the same. So for Prince, he says, "Hi, Timothy. I have a few questions regarding cloud security and would really appreciate your insights." So getting started. So I am currently in cybersecurity, looking to transition into cloud security. What would be the best way to get started in this field? Then the other question is around career opportunities. Are cloud security careers primarily managed by cloud providers, or is there room for independent professionals and freelancers to thrive in the space? And so industry gaps also in East Africa. Are there any notable gaps in cloud within East Africa where one can focus their efforts to receive more opportunities and add value to the industry? Right? And then the last question, Kabisa, is asking, where can I get intern roles for AWS Cloud Practitioner by Christmas?
Okay, so let me start with the intern roles, right? The last question. So for intern roles, of course, we have a couple of AWS partners in this market. Some of them are local companies. Others are, foreign companies who set up office here, but they are still hiring local personnel. So those are some of the areas that you can find, internship opportunities. Of course, even there are some companies that are not necessarily an AWS powerhouse or an AWS house, right? But they use the cloud, right? So if you have the skills, you can still find internship opportunities in such businesses or such companies. So the opportunities are there for internship. So you just have to, knock some doors, make applications or send out applications, and network more, so that you also get to know where you can find these opportunities. Skills or gaps that I've seen in this market. I see a lot of gaps, especially in data analytics, the space of AI and machine learning. That's an area where we are seeing now a lot of startups, coming up within that space. And the giant companies that have been in the space for a longer time, also leveraging their muscles and getting into that space. However, AI, data analytics, machine learning, that's a space where I don't see a lot of people. But it's a good place to, if you're interested in those areas, it's a good place to start. So data analytics, AI, that's a fairly new area. And then, of course, machine learning. There are also areas where, when you're looking at the AWS and cloud overall, is, there are niche areas that do not get much focus on. For example, cost optimization, right? A lot of people and even solution architects focus on migrations and architecting and building solutions, leveraging on cloud, but we don't have many people just focusing on cloud optimization and just understanding how, pricing and cost can be managed on AWS. And even for even the AWS partners who are in the space, you don't find a lot of focus in it, right? They focus on migration and migration. But the cost for it is losing customers because you're not able to manage their cost, right? So I think it's also an area where there's a lot of opportunities, and perhaps, by choice you can focus on it, just to understand cloud financial management and focusing on, highlighting areas where, customers can save money when they move to cloud or when they're operating from the cloud. There was a question about possibility of being a freelancer and so forth. So I will say this, and this is from my own personal experience, is that I began as a freelancer, right? I did a lot of hustling even before I started working for an entity. And yes, are there opportunities there? Yes, there are opportunities. And I know a lot of cloud consultants who do not work for any particular company, and they're doing really well. So it's about how aggressive you are. It's about networking. It's about owning your skills and being known for what you do, right? So it's not controlled. I think a lot of people have that misconception that you must work for an AWS partner or you must work for AWS. No, it's not a must. You can be a freelancer and still excel on this. If you go to platforms like Upwork, you will see a lot of cloud consultants there, and they do tremendously well. So that's an area that you basically have to choose which area you need to go, right? I started off as just a consultant. I started off as a freelancer, and I was earning my living through that. But of course, as I said, you have to combine it with additional skills. It's not just understanding cloud. It's not just about knowing AWS. It's about being able to leverage AWS, because, as I said, it's an enabler. It's an accelerator for business growth. You have to understand other things. For example, you combine that skill for AWS, combine it with coding skills, combine it with understanding just how businesses work, right? And then you can excel in that space. The other question was around cybersecurity and security, and basically, so this is what I would say: cloud security and cybersecurity, right? So the bigger or the bigger term here, or the larger aspect of security is the cybersecurity, and just understanding how do I leverage my cybersecurity knowledge and skills for cloud, right? A lot of the services on AWS that are built for security also leveraging cybersecurity standards, right? If you look for this the AWS security standards and and the tooling that has been built for that purpose, they basically leverage on the same concept of understanding cybersecurity. And I would say that is the place to start. First of all, gain the overall knowledge about security for data, for platforms, and so forth. How do I leverage different platforms? Because even when you go to the AWS marketplace, you will find a lot of cybersecurity products there, from ISVs, Fortinet, Sophos, and so many ISVs there who offer their cybersecurity products. And again, when you look at a customer who is operating on-prem, they will not lack it. They will have a cybersecurity aspect within their business. The question will be, if I am migrating this customer to the cloud, how do I ensure that the same posture they have, or even higher posture, better posture that they have, is achieved on the cloud? and then understand how I can take advantage or leverage the different tools for security on AWS to achieve the same. So it's both at the same time. Cybersecurity, if you have an interest in that, start there. Then come to the cloud security space. You will sort of be now specializing because cybersecurity, again, is a wider subject. So again, you can now choose an area for you to specialize and grow at. Was there another question, Mark, or that was there was another one?
No, I think you've covered all of them. Either way, we can go into migration, then we can close up with questions. So Daniel, I'll hold off kidogo. We'll do a bit of migration, then we'll get into the Q&A part. Yeah, you can go.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So for this next session, to be honest, I don't have a presentation. I will just basically take you through the process. I have my notes. I will send some materials to Mark after the session, and then he will distribute them to you guys. But when you're looking at a migration is, it's a really big project. When you look at each migration that you might come across, for some people, it might look like a tiny project, but it's not tiny. And it depends on where you look at it from, right? A lot of people look at it from the point of architecting and moving the applications to AWS, and that's it, right? But a successful migration has three core phases. The first phase is the assessment phase or the discovery phase, right? To even understand, one, what is the cloud adoption readiness for this particular business, right? It might be even a personal project, for instance. Let's start there. It's a personal project. I want to move this to AWS. What's your capacity to even operate or run that workload on AWS or any other cloud in that matter, right? So you have to assess the readiness for the business, for yourself, to even operate those workloads on the cloud, right? Then the assessment, again, to understand the workloads in question here. So it might be a whole data center that needs to be migrated. So you need to understand, how is that landscape like? How is it built? What are the components that communicate to each other? How are they sized? What are the requirements? Are there any, regulation or compliance requirements that I need to adhere to, right? Is there any, for example, PII data that I cannot move to the cloud? What is the regulation around that? What does the business say about that? What is the business goal around this migration? Why are they moving to the cloud, right? For some customers, they want to move to the cloud simply because in a failure time here, we need to do a hardware refresh, right? Or there is a licensing question that has come up and we cannot buy those licenses. Again, we need to move to AWS because we do not have the capital investment that is required. In some cases, it might be even just a DR requirement where they say, okay, we need a DR. We set up another data center. Do we move to a co-location or do we move to the cloud? So it's a decision again, right? So that aspect of understanding or assessing and discovering the whole reason why the business is moving to the cloud or wants to move to the cloud, what is being moved to the cloud, forms a very critical part of your project for the because once you understand all these components and what you now want to move to the cloud, you will need some data to help you decide on your architecture or your blueprint on the cloud, right? So you have to do a thorough assessment so that you have that data to enable you even go to the next step of the migration project. So cloud adoption readiness, there is a tool on AWS that you can use for that purpose, where we basically run it through the customer to understand their business readiness, understand the capacity in terms of personnel. Do they have the personnel in-house who can support this project? Do they need 12 stores? And so forth. What are the applications like? Are these applications ready for for the cloud or not? Because again, not everything is suitable for the cloud. Some of it might be retained on the cloud, right? Because the decision that you're making or the data that you're collecting at this stage is basically to enable you make a choice between the different migration strategies that we have, right? You know about the 7Rs, right? So you either retaining, you either refactoring, replatforming, you're repurchasing, you need to do a lift and shift perhaps, which is a rehost. So that data or that will enable you make that decision is based on that assessment phase that I've talked about. After that, and allow me to again speak a bit more on what is happening at the assess phase, is where there's someone who asked about sizing the on-prem infrastructure. So that is the place where you will use the migration evaluator, the AWS application discovery tool, the portfolio assessment, to even build a TCO or even a business case for the business. So those are the tools that you will use at that stage. So the migration readiness assessment, the MRA tool, is something that again you will use during the assessment phase, and even try to understand. For example, we during the assessment phase, you will come across some servers that perhaps, like for example, it's a Windows server that's already end of support. It's no longer supported on AWS. Microsoft itself does not support it. If you look at 2008, 2012, those are already end of support. So you need to make decisions about those specific workloads, right? Because you cannot lift and shift them to AWS as they are. So that specific phase is very critical because it will inform the next decisions that you make. The next phase for the migration is the mobilize or the planning stage, right? So you've collected all the data, you have a TCO, you have a business case, right? A preliminary business case in this matter. So you basically want to now do a planning, right? So what are the tools that you might use at this stage? The control tower, perhaps for setting up the account set up on AWS. The migration evaluator now to go in depth in understanding each of these servers, what is hosted in those servers, right? What is the status of the servers? For example, if it's end of life or there is a licensing aspect that needs to be addressed, then you want to run another program called OLA. So that's for Oracle licensing optimization and so forth, Microsoft licensing optimization. So you want to have all these during this stage and have now a more in-depth understanding of the infrastructure. So you will do now an in-depth analysis. The initial one, perhaps some people even do it manually. You issue a template to the customer, they fill in all the servers they have and the applications that they have. The sizing of the servers, they fill in that information manually. But you want to understand what are the dependencies for each of these applications that are in these servers. What are the applications that are communicating or relying on each other, right, for them to even work? So now you're doing an in-depth analysis and you're using application discovery tools. You're using an automated landing zone, building a landing zone, migration app to plan the migration for the specific servers that you have. You're also building a cloud center of excellence at the same time, just to ensure that you have built capacity in-house and you have set out roles for your team that is going to be taking part in the migration, right? So during the mobilize phase, at the same time, you also want to pilot or test some workload on AWS and see how they perform, right? So part of that process involves maybe you need to agree with the business what is the success criteria for the workloads that you want to pilot on AWS. So they will pick one or two 3 minimum, and then you pilot that on AWS. You run that for a period of time. You have a success criteria to measure how that migration would look like, and then of course continue to optimize before you can migrate to production. A lot of customers skip that step where you have already done an assessment and then you move straight to migration. You do not pilot any workload. So it's very important to make sure that you pilot some workloads, understand what is set up, right? Understand how it performs, understand the customer requirement, and have that success criteria for the customer to, agree whether the changes that need to be made. And also, what I have found value in it is it also gives you more insights on what it would cost to run certain workloads on AWS, right? Because if you're running it for a month and it's been utilized as it would be used normally, then it gives you some, feedback on how is it performing. At the end of this period for piloting, how much has it costed us? And then, of course, from there, you can continue to optimize even prior to migrating to production. So that is important to do the mobilize phase, just to understand how this different workloads will work. For the end of support workloads, again at this stage, then you will choose to what do you do with the end of support workloads. For them, servers that need to be upgraded. Then what is the migration mechanism for end of support workloads? So AWS has a program for, they call it the end of support migration program, the EMP. So it basically allows you to migrate or to move your application from the end of support platforms to supported platforms. So if you had applications that were running on Windows Server 2008, and you also want to move them to the cloud, what is the process like, right? So they will provide you the tooling to be able to package those applications together with the dependencies and simply, rehost them on supported operating systems on the AWS. So it's more like a lift and shift. However, you're only moving the applications and you're moving them from one supported platform to another. So the migrate phase, which is the third phase, is where now you're actually migrating servers, you're migrating databases, you're migrating different applications to AWS. And of course, you're trying to automate that process as much as possible to avoid errors and to also fast track the process so that, again, does not take unnecessarily longer time than is required. So one way is to use the AWS Migration Hub, the AWS Application Migration Service, so that you're able to migrate these servers in an automated way. Some servers, for example, some workloads might require a different or a manual approach in the migration. And the process for that, of course, again, is facilitated by using different tools. Like I said, AWS also partners with different ISVs who offer or provide tools to assist with migrations for different workloads. And that process, again, is checked by setting up success criteria and mechanisms to monitor how the migration has been done. The AWS well-architected framework now has a lens for migration, right? So it basically has pillars, the same 6 pillars that we all know about, that are now integrated within the migration lens to advise on how to carry out migrations in the right way to AWS. For example, if you're talking about security, you need to ensure that even as you migrate this data to AWS, you've taken into consideration aspects like data residency, compliance and regulation requirements. You also have to ensure that the data that is being transferred is, encrypted while on transit, and even where it's being stored, it's encrypted. So the migration lens advises on ensuring how these migrations are supposed to be, to be executed. After migration, for example, you might have scenarios where you've perhaps moved data that was not yet classified, and it contains some PII information on data, and it cannot be hosted on the cloud. So what is the remediation plan for that? You also have to ensure that during the migration, operations for the business, of course, continue as normal, right? You do not want to bring about downtimes, and the operations are not running, and just sitting there waiting for you to complete the migration. So you have to execute it properly to ensure that there are no those prolonged downtimes unnecessarily. A lot of customers that we've worked with, for example, in my previous engagements, we set up, cutover dates for, workloads. For example, if it's an ERP system, they might need to do a cutover during the night. They might decide to do a cutover over the weekend just to ensure that there is minimal downtime and interruption to business. So again, working closely with your customer is very important during migration, so that you have also set up fallback plans, right? Something might happen during migration. So what happens, right? So you need to have fallback plans to ensure that in case of a failure, maybe you're transferring some data, or with an interruption of a service on AWS, then what is your fallback plan, right? So that has, again, to be put into consideration. Automate as much as possible, right? For infrastructure, you can, automate it. For some applications that you can, automate migrating. For example, with databases, you can use the AWS database migration service. You can look for some, third-party solutions from the AWS marketplace, or you can work with a partner to, take advantage of, some of those toolings. Use the AWS application migration service to package and migrate some of your applications. For end of support workloads, work with AWS partners to guide you on how to migrate those end of support workloads to supported platforms. In some cases, a migration might not be a full-on cloud. It might be an hybrid setup. So consider using services like AWS Outposts, especially in scenarios where there is a data residency concern or requirement. For VMware workloads, there are now automated tools to migrate your VMware workloads to AWS. Consider leveraging on those to avoid interruptions and downtimes, because they are very automated and very efficient. Ensure that as you transfer your data, you've set up an hybrid connectivity through a site-to-site VPN, for example. In this region, we do not yet have a direct connect. But if you're working with customers who are in regions where direct connect is supported, consider using that as well. Data transfer, of course, is a huge concern for any migration, because it might determine whether it's successful or not, right? So you have to think about the volumes of data that is being transferred to AWS. You have to think about, things like the available bandwidth for even that data to be moved to AWS. For example, if you're dealing with larger volumes of data, and there might be interruptions. You might consider S3 multi-part uploads to ensure that even when there's an interruption, you can resume those uploads. For services that can be, used in an hybrid setup like the AWS Storage Gateway, consider using that. AWS DataSync is also very efficient in transferring large volumes of data. The AWS transfer family, for example, the SFTP, just to ensure that, again, the data transfer is encrypted and, meets the compliance requirements. Over and above the migration, of course, you need to keep on optimizing, right? You don't just migrate and that's it. You need to keep on optimizing. You need to keep on modernizing the workloads that can be modernized. Make a choice between cloud native applications or services on AWS, like cloud native databases. Think about cloud native storage services that offer better, resilience. And then, of course, as I said before, follow up with a well-architected framework to ensure that the way you've laid out your blueprint on AWS is the right way, because security is a very key concern. Even customers on AWS have been attacked, have been targeted, and you need to keep your workloads protected. So that is all about migration. Sorry, I think I've spoken too much. My throat is a bit dry right now. But if you have questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. Do you want to get some water? Oh, yeah, you have some water there. Okay, great. So I think Daniel had his hand up. We can thank you very much for the presentation, first of all. It's been very insightful, especially just showing us, especially the assessment phase, at least for me, and just making sure that is, you dot your I's and cross your T's. So that was kind of important. And also cost optimization, it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge, so getting people to do that. So we'll get into the questions. I know Daniel had a question, so I'll ask Daniel if he has a question. You can unmute and ask your question. And whoever else has a question, you can put them on the chat or unmute and ask, or just raise your hand and we'll go on. Daniel?
Hello. You're good? Oh, yeah, I'm good. I was asking about certifications. How do you view them in terms of employers? How they consider them? Are they in demand? Like having a certification makes you maybe better or something like that? Yeah. How do you view it being certified?
Okay. So for the certification, yes, of course they are in demand, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the ways that employers will validate your knowledge and skill. Not so much on skill, I would say knowledge, because skill is built by doing, right? You build skill by practice, you build skill by doing those things. So yes, certifications are important. I would say what's even more important is being able to build the skills, for understanding, for example, how to assess, understand a workload, understanding what services to leverage on AWS for specific components for your workload is not something that comes by just virtue of learning or reading. It comes from using those tools in actual sense, and understanding how they work, and switching them in between for different use cases based on your experience using them. So it's important as you do the certifications to also build skills, and you can build the skills using the labs. AWS Skill Builder offers some labs. If you're using the paid one, There is a platform called the eCloud Guru that also gives a sandbox account for doing some of those labs. So even taking part, sometimes you can get the $300 credits that can also enable you run some labs on AWS. So building the skills is very important because for me and in any recruitment exercise that I've taken part in, it's always been, I want to know what you can do. It's not about the certification, right? I will give you an actual task, an actual, mini project for you to execute, and that is what is going to inform me about your skill. So yes, you will find some, if you're lucky, some employers will be willing to pay for some exams for you, right? Depending on the kind of projects that they see more in their pipelines. So yes, so a lot of that, is more tied to, the employer that you meet. But it's very important that build your skills, get your hands-on skills, and not just focus on doing the certifications and passing.
Yeah, thank you. I think certification normally is just an affirmation of what you know, but you have to know and have the project-based learning. So I think that's quite important. Maybe to kind of follow up on that. Okay, so let me ask the question for what's his name? Jacob. He had a question. Then I'll get back to what you're talking about. So okay, so someone was asking how can you get exam certification vouchers or discounts? I think you can answer that. And also, what are some of the cloud projects you can use to build up portfolios? Then I'll get to, I think, one for mentorship. Yeah.
Okay. So exam vouchers, of course. So AWS gives some. Well, so this is how that program has changed. When I started, for example, we used to get 100% exam vouchers, right? I used to get quite a number actually. That's on my email. Like, I don't know, for some reason I kept on getting a lot of vouchers, 100% vouchers that I used to share with my friends and my colleagues, right? But that changed. I think about 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, it changed. They stopped giving 100% vouchers. They now started giving 50% vouchers, right? So, and you will see, if you follow some of those trainers on LinkedIn, you will see them saying, there's a 50% voucher for this particular exam, and you have to kind of participate in a challenge. And the challenge is usually like, if you're going to do the exam before end of the year or before this particular time, then you can use this exam, this voucher. So there are those programs. The other way is, I've seen it, is if you have peers who've already done the exams, because for every exam you pass, you get a 50% voucher for the next exam, right? So you can request your friends to give you if they don't need them or they've already done all the exams, right? So they can give you those vouchers that you can still use them, right? The other way is, of course, I think for those who work for companies that want to start using AWS, I think it's important because it's a value add to the company. To even speak with your HR or your employer to try and see if they can pay for your exams where possible. But over and above, those are now the most common programs that I've seen people taking advantage of. Those who work for partners, of course, are able to request for vouchers from AWS, and that is facilitated. But that program has, the voucher thing has, changed a lot. So yes. I don't know what you mean about discounts. Is it discounts around exams? Is it discounts on, running workloads on AWS?
If I'm not wrong, I think you meant exam discounts.
Yeah, so
yeah. So the 50%.
So for every exam that you do, if you pass, you get a 50% discount for the next exam. So if you look at your Metrics account, if you've done solutions architect, if you've done cloud practitioner, you get 50% for the solutions architect. So you come to the solutions architect when you're paying for the exam, put in the voucher, the one that you get, the code that you get from the discount, but after passing cloud practitioner, and for the next exams, you pass your solutions architect, you get a 50%. Apply it for the next exam so that you also get those discounts.
Yeah, okay. So the other question was from Duncan. So if you have any questions, I think we'll kind of close out in the next 5 minutes so that we can release people. Duncan had a question here. Hi, team. Thank you for the insightful session. Are you mentoring people? He's looking for practical skills. And do you have links where I can get AWS credits for practices, essentially? Yeah, that. And the other question, I think maybe we did answer well, is what are some of the cloud projects we can use to build our portfolios by by Jacob.
Okay. Yes, mentoring, yes. I'm mentoring a couple of people. and my mentoring usually is, I like to engage people with the projects that I'm doing, right? Personal projects that I'm doing, not customer projects. So for the people that I'm mentoring, I like to involve them at that level, involve them with practical projects, right? That I can send you a project, I tell you, please execute this project, and then that sort of helps you build your skills. The other way is, of course, guidance. A lot of people ask me, okay, this is where I'm interested in. Like, for example, there are people who are interested with software development, but at the same time, they want to learn AWS. What are the areas that they can focus on, right? So I will help guide them in that space. So that is the other way that I mentor people. The other way is, of course, peer-to-peer talks and encouragement, right? A lot of times people do not understand that you have to invest in yourself, right? And when you invest yourself, of course, it will pay back, right? There is a return on that investment. And part of that investment is basically paying for those exams. Pay for those exams. It's costly, but pay for those exams. So I will tell you, point blank, if you've not been able to get the vouchers and so forth, if you are able to pay for the exams, please just pay, right? That's my encouragement. That is the best way I can help you, because you're investing in yourself and you will see a return of that investment. I have paid for, funny enough, Mark, is I used to forget about using the discount that I used to get for the exam I passed. So I ended up paying for all my exams. So now my vouchers I've just given to my friends. I think I have a few that are remaining. Those who are lucky, I will send, I think I have 2 or 3 remaining. I can share to those who want to do a professional exam. So that, that is the most expensive. So it will cover 50% of it. So Mark, I have about 2 or 3 vouchers. I'll be happy to share those with anyone who wants to do a professional exam before June. I can share them with them. The other way I'm mentoring, of course, is I'm building my own venture, getting into the AWS partnership space. So the only other way I can think about is offering internship positions and running this with the community and just seeing how we can grow each other. Credits for practice, of course, you have to have an AWS account for you to apply for those credits. So there's a link, I will share that link where those who are interested in applying for those credits can apply. Then you will get 500, I think 300 initially. Before they used to give more, but now you can get maybe a maximum of $300, which I think is quite sufficient to run 2 or 3 projects. Cloud projects for building a portfolio. This is, this is a very open-ended question, but this is what I would say. What's your area of interest? Are you a software developer? Do you want to build a portfolio around that area? Are you a security or cyber security person? Are you a database administrator? What is the area that you want to build your skill in, right? Because do not try to be the best in everything. It will take you longer, right? Focus, lock in, and just build your skill within that area. So if you're looking for migration projects, there are so many. There are so many. I can tell you there are so many. If you go to AWS, if you go to GitHub and you search for AWS samples, GitHub AWS samples, you will see quite a lot of AWS sample projects there that you can try and deploy on AWS. And that will help you build skills, right? If you're looking for projects for you to add money, go to Upwork. Go to this, I don't know what they are called, but the sorts of Upwork and so forth, freelance.com and so forth. Go there, you will see a lot of customers who are seeking for people to assist them with cloud projects. I know a lot of customers who put their, requests on Upwork for cloud projects. Some of them are paid on hourly rate. Some of them are, per project. So go there, let's try and explore, try and win some of those. I know it's a bit difficult to get jobs on Upwork, but there are those who have mastered that process. So there, try and find some projects there that you can, run with. Don't be afraid to look for jobs, even when you don't have the certifications. As I said, it's about skills. Any authentic employer will want to see your skills and not the certifications. So if you can prove yourself by doing an actual project, do not be afraid to approach employers. Because I know a lot of people, like even when I was starting, I knew a lot of people who are not certified, but they were deploying projects on AWS. And that's the thing. It's not about the certifications, it's about the skill. The certifications, yes, are important. They will open the doors for you, right? But they will not do the job for you. They will not do the interview for you. Can you execute, right? Do you have the hands-on skills? So focus on that and do not be afraid to engage it. This community is big. There are a lot of people who know stuff. And if you can leverage on it, then you stand a better chance to grow yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much. This has been a really insightful session. Especially, at least for me, especially the lifecycle management part. I do have a lot of backups and they do cost a lot of money. So sometimes when I'm maybe when I go to the console, I see, why is this one here? Then I delete it. But normally, if you have that automated, I think that would be important. So I'll kind of look at that. Beyond that, I think that was the last question actually would be, now that you have the golden jacket, where do you wear it? Do you wear it at home? Where do you wear? Where can you wear it?
You're the second person who is asking this question. So this golden jacket, I think I've worn it 4 times now. The first time was when it was delivered to our office. The second time was when we were taking office photos with my colleagues. The third time was at this event, that the CIO event that was just last week, I think. Yes, so I think, yes, those are the times that I won it. And it's like a trophy, right? You don't go everywhere with your trophy. So it's more of a trophy for me. And it's, I don't know. Plus, it's yellow, it's gold. I don't think it's something that you can wear every day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If it was black, maybe.
If it was black, yeah, maybe, yeah. Or maybe if it was a hat.
Maybe yes.
If
it was a hat, I would say it every day, yes. But right now it's in the hanger, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I thank you for the dedication. You really delved into a lot of things, and so we're really thankful for that. For the new people who've come in, thank you for coming in. I've sent a few links on where you can join us on WhatsApp, and we'll figure out a way to be able to share the slides and a way to also reach to Timothy. But I think he also shared a QR code. Hopefully, you scanned it. I don't know if you want to share it again, then we can kind of close it. Yeah. So I'll just play some music now and call it a day. So Murad is asking if you had to reinvent, would you wear the golden jacket? I don't know. Probably.
Yes. Okay, so I would. However, mine came late. And this is the disadvantage that we have within this market is this jacket is only made from North Virginia, right? You can only get it from North Virginia. And, it's not a guarantee once you pass all the exams, you will get it because you have to make a request. Either if you're working through a partner, or if you are a partner, or if you know people in AWS that you can reach out to, then you apply for it. So I did my last exams, I think in October last year. So it took you, and it came just there this past month. So it basically took almost 4 months for it to come to me. If I was at the reInvent, probably not, because it would not have come. Right? Maybe if they were issuing them there, then yes. But it basically came 4 months after I'd done my exams. But when above, I give thanks to the people who facilitated that process. Because even the shipment was a challenge to get it over here from the US. But I have good people that facilitated the process for me, and I just want to thank them. I will not mention them by name, but the two very key people who played that part in ensuring that it was delivered.
Yeah. Okay. So you can share your QR code again. Then we'll find out a way. So I'll stop recording and